They say migration is a journey of the body, but exile is a journey of the soul. For Daniel Mwangi, a brilliant young lawyer from Nairobi, the journey began not with ambition, but with love. His wife Grace secured a job offer in the United Kingdom with the NHS. It was an opportunity too good to ignore for their 2 young children. Daniel packed up his suits, his law books, his framed certificates, and the life he had built. He told himself it was temporary. He told himself he would rise again. He told himself that brilliance travels. But the world he was about to enter would test every belief he had about himself. The United Kingdom greeted the Mwangi family with a cold Daniel had never known. Not just the sharp winter air, but a quiet, distant coldness between people. At Heathrow, Grace shivered and pulled her coat tighter. "Aish, this cold is disrespectful," she muttered, half laughing. Daniel forced a smile and said they would get used to it. As they waited for the taxi, strangers hurried past without eye contact. He felt something tighten in his chest, and Nairobi's warmth felt a world away. Their new flat was on the 3rd floor of a gray building that looked tired even in daylight. The letting agent unlocked the door and said it was compact and perfect for a young family. Daniel stepped inside and felt his heart sink. The living room was barely large enough for a sofa, and the kitchen was a strip of counters. The bedrooms were the kind that made you breathe differently. Grace tried to sound positive and said at least it was warm. Daniel nodded, though he could feel the walls closing in. The agent handed over the keys and said, "Welcome to your new home." The word home felt heavy. The first morning, Daniel greeted a neighbor in the hallway. She blinked, startled, then gave a tight smile and said morning. No conversation, no curiosity, no warmth. Another neighbor brushed past, wearing headphones without looking up. In Nairobi, neighbors were practically extended family, but here they were ghosts sharing walls. That evening, Grace sighed as she hung her coat and said people here don't talk. Daniel said they were just different, though he wasn't sure he believed it. The streets were clean, orderly, and almost too quiet. Cars moved with precision and people walked with purpose. No one lingered and no one greeted strangers. Daniel pushed the pram while Grace held their eldest by the hand. They walked to the shop to buy groceries. Inside, the cashier barely looked at them and said the total flatly. Daniel blinked and questioned the price, surprised at the cost. Grace nudged him and said this is the UK. He paid swallowing the shock because back home, that amount could fill a pantry. Grace started her NHS job the following Monday and adjusted her uniform in the mirror. Daniel told her she would be amazing. She smiled and said he would hold things down at home. When she left, the flat felt even smaller, and Daniel fed the children and tried to keep busy. He told himself it was temporary, but temporary stretched into weeks and months. He applied for jobs, but every application came back with regret notices. One night after the children were asleep, Daniel sat at the small kitchen table with his laptop. Grace joined him in her uniform with exhaustion etched on her face and asked about qualifying here. He hesitated and said he had started looking that day. He opened a website and read that first he needed training, costing around £6,000. Grace's eyebrows shot up at the price. He explained that he had to do the SQEs, solicitor qualifying exams, and the exam fees for SQE1 and SQE2 would cost thousands more. Grace asked how much in total, and he whispered maybe $10,000 to $12,000 before living costs. Grace covered her mouth in shock and said, "My God." He read aloud that Kenyan qualifications were respected but not enough, and he couldn't practice without passing the SQE. Grace reached for his hand and said they would find a way. He looked at her with heavy eyes and said he had left a whole practice and life behind and was starting from zero. Grace corrected him and said he was starting again, not starting from zero. The days that followed their arrival unfolded slowly. Like a long exhale Daniel didn't realize he'd been holding. Every morning, he woke before the children, sat at the edge of the narrow bed and listened to the unfamiliar silence of the building. No roosters crowing, no matatis honking, no neighbors chatting loudly through thin walls, just the hum of the radiator and the occasional distant siren. He missed the noise. He missed the life. Hey! Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe and find out what happens next in this emotional journey across continents.